Hi everyone, Julian here with a video tutorial on project number 5, Figurative Entourage for DSGN211. In this video tutorial, I'm going to go over how we can take our 3D scans from Polycam or whichever photogrammetry mobile phone scanning app you're using into Rhino so that we can get ready for 3D printing for our training on Monday and for this assignment due on December 2nd. So first things first, we're going to start a new file in Rhino, and we'll do a small objects millimeters. Once we're in there, we'll go in and go File, Import, and then we want to find where we put our file. So I'm going to go to my 3D scans, and then here I've got a scan provided by Jack here. And then this file that I'm looking for is an FBX file, so a motion builder file. But you might be looking for an STL file or an OBJ file that you could export from Polycam. So open this. So then it's going to give you some options here. I'm just going to go ahead and press OK. So now that's been imported. You'll see that it's kind of like off to the side here. So I'm going to go in, do ZS, zoom selected, create a bounding box. So you just type bounding box in the command prompt. I'm going to go into my bottom of the bounding box, or you could just go from the corner and then type 0, 0, 0. What that does is it's going to bring this geometry to the middle of our file. Then you can do ZS again. So now we got our 3D scan in the middle of the work area in Rhino. So then one thing here that I want to check is like what the scale of my object is. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to see, this is 1.5 millimeters. So that is pretty small. So what I'm going to do is scale this up so that this is at a scale of a person. So we'll go here and we'll scale this from the bottom to the top. We'll do something like, well, we want to maybe measure our subject, right? So let's say this person that was 3D scanned stands at about 1.7 meters tall. I'm going to type 1.7 meters from that scale command. Then now I've got my model at the correct scale. And then what we'll want to do here is just double check that we've got indeed the right height. Excuse me. So here I've got just about 1.7 meters. So that indeed worked. And then I want to scale this by 1 to 50. So 1 divided by 50. You hold shift and press enter. Now we've got a nice scale figure of our model. And then I'm going to take this, go from the center, bring this to center my file again. And from the center, I'm going to create a cube. Or maybe I'll create actually like a circle. So I'm going to type 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to create my circle right from the center of the work surface. I'm going to make this, let's say 10 millimeters in diameter. And then I'm going to extrude this 5 millimeters. Or we can just extrude this ourselves like this. So I'm going to try and kind of encapsulate my figure, at least at the bottom from the base. So what I can do here is, well, first I'm going to put this on its own layer. So we're going to call this like the figure layer. Then I'm going to use this red layer as my cutting layer. So I'm going to take this mesh, I'm going to do mesh split, select cutting object here. Well, we're going to bring this down just about there. So mesh split, sorry, we're going to do mesh Boolean split, so it creates like these solid surfaces or solid meshes. So select your mesh, select your cutting surface. Now we have an open mesh here. We should have a closed mesh here. It looks like what we have is actually a open mesh. So what we can do, I'm going to create a surface here. Oops. Or a curve. And then I'm going to do a planar surf command. And I'm going to move this down 1 millimeter. Create kind of like a little platform for my figure so that it's easier to kind of glue them down or place them in my models. I'm going to do a mesh Boolean split command, and I'm going to select my cutting object, which is this surface. And now we've got one open mesh here and one closed mesh here. So now we've got a figure that if we create a bounding box around is 35 millimeters tall and 11 millimeters wide, and has this nice circular base that's 1 mil tall. So then the next thing we can do here is we'll select our object or our mesh, and I'm going to go File, I'm going to go Export Selected. I'm going to create like a new folder here. And we'll call this like STL exports. Let's say I'm going to select STL. So it's a stereolithography file. That's what we're going to want for 3D printing. Jack 3D scan figure. And then it's going to present you with this option. So you're going to pick binary for this one. And then what we can do is we can use a software here like Prusa Slicer. So this is like a free software you can download. Or you could also use Cura, C-U-R-A from the internet. That's like an online slicer. And what I'm going to do, very simple, I'm going to go to where I sent that STL export. I'm just going to drag it onto the build plate. So now we can see our little figure here. So it's looking, you know, like a small scale figure as a 1/50 would be on the build plate. And I'm going to slice it. So when I slice it, you can kind of see how we've turned this into layers, how this would print, and then we can see our little base there. So this base is really going to help us print the bottom of our figure and make sure that our figure doesn't just fall over all the time. And it's really useful for actually just like gluing them down, because you've got like a nice flat surface. So like I would recommend that. But you know, if you have like a really nice 3D scan with like a flat bottom, you could maybe print it without a base. Same thing applies to, let's say you want to create like a nice flat base for your figure, but you don't want to use a surface like I did. You can kind of raise your surface as high as you'd like, and we could do a mesh boolean split again, use a surface there, and then now we've got a perfectly flat bottom for the feet. So that should help us with the 3D printing of the first layer, and also help us with how how the figure will be able to stand. So that just about covers everything there. Once you're happy, you know, setting all your settings here in your slicing software, which you'll learn in the training, you can set things like your infill, your layer heights. So like here, I'm gonna pick my Prusa printer. You can choose how you want to center your figure on the build plate. So this is my printer at home. But even if you don't have a Prusa, this software is really good at working with just about any printer. It gives you just like a good sense of how something is going to print. So let's say like we did 100% infill, which you might do with figures such as these, because like they're so small. Like the smaller an object is, sometimes the better it is to just print it 100%. We can see how when we look really closely, there's no gaps at all, and we're printing every single layer in this kind of cross-hatching manner. And we'll get the most detail as well with the lesser amount of layers, or like the smaller layer heights. So most amount of individual layers and 100% infill. And then we can print something like a little skirt around the model, which will basically help kind of prime the nozzle before it starts printing our scale figure. But yeah, and then we can also see how much time it'll take here. It says 21 minutes, and how much material we're going to use up, you know, like how much this will cost us. And then you also get a really good look here at the size of the figure in millimeters. Sorry, right here, the size. So like we had measured in Rhino, and you can also set the scale here. So I guess you could technically export like an object that was at a larger scale and then give it a percentage of 1/50. But I'd recommend that you scale it in Rhino before you bring it into here, because if an object is too big in the 3D printer software, like the size of a person, obviously they can't fit on a printer bed. You might not be able to import that file. So definitely scale your figures before you bring them into your 3D slicer. And at the same time, if you have more than one figure, you can also import more than one. So like, let's say you have different versions of the figures, we can actually lay these out automatically. using this auto arrange, and it'll create like spaces in between them. So yeah, I hope this is useful to all of you. Let me know if you have any questions, and then we'll see you on Tuesday there, and we can go over some more kind of tips and tricks on how to set yourself up for the 3D scanning and the 3D printing. Anyways, have a good Monday, and we'll see you on Tuesday.